In Meridian, Idaho, in 2011, Emmett Corrigan was building a life most would envy.
Emmett Corrigan was an up-and-coming lawyer, 30 years old, married with 5 children, and in his profession, he was considered a rock star. He was charming and debonair, he knew his craft, and he was going places.
But behind closed doors, Emmett was harboring secrets, which in turn would have deadly consequences. On the evening of March the 11th, 2011, Emmett left his Meridian home under the guise of picking up a prescription.
He walked out the garage door, slammed the door, which woke up the baby, but I knew something wasn't right. I felt it inside of me.
Everybody thought they had a squeaky clean life.
The hate that you feel when you find out someone who's sleeping with your spouse is real.
A man gets betrayed by his wife. I mean, I can see why he'd be angry.
Meridian, Idaho, is a small, prospering city located in Ada County. It has a low crime rate.
Meridian is what we would call a bedroom community. It's a safe, tight-knit community, a suburb of the city, and people really want to be there because it's a great place to raise your kids and to have a family.
In 2011, I was married to Emmett Corrigan. Together we had 5 children. Back then, Meridian was really just kind of a small suburb town of Boise. All the houses were pretty new where we lived. It was just kind of white picket fences and young families. Everybody at the park playing with their kids. One of the reasons we wanted to live here was because it was a safe place and good family town.
This area is really a wonderful place to move. Apparently, a lot of other people around the country have found that out, and now we're one of the fastest growing cities in the United States. It's a safe city. The people are friendly, good job opportunities.
Ashley Corrigan, raised with strong family values in her Mormon upbringing, is deeply committed to creating a loving, supportive home for her husband, Emmett, and their 5 children.
When I was in high school, I had 2 little sisters that were born when I was in the 9th grade and the 11th grade. And I used to take them on little big brother sister dates. And I said, I want to have 2 little daughters just like that. I got 5. Ashley was the first. We were really close.
I had 2 older brothers and 2 younger sisters.
Their mom, Terry, was from Idaho, and she raved about Idaho. She knew I wouldn't want to live in a little farming community, so Boise was our choice, the Boise area. So we moved here right out of chiropractic college in 1990, August of 1990.
Emmett and Ashley appeared to have the perfect relationship. They were young, married in a Mormon temple, successful, on the rise, had children, and lived in a bedroom community where everybody thought they had a squeaky clean life.
We've always been involved in the church, and my children, each one of them, have had their own story of gaining their testimony, and it's just been a solid part of our family. Emmett and I met at the school gym at Utah State University. I was working there, and a friend of his worked with me, so he kind of just set us up in this really awkward, come upstairs in 5 minutes, bring these towels. And when I first met him, it was kind of one of those like cheesy Hallmark movies. Like we both just kind of knew that we were gonna be together, and that was how it was. We were just inseparable from then on.
And very quite quickly after that, they announced that they were getting married. So it was rather quick after they met and rather quick after they told us that they were getting married.
The first few months, we just it was all the holidays. So we went to Thanksgiving with all the parents, and I met his dad, he met my dad. We just spent all the holidays kind of, I guess, falling in love, really.
He was very outgoing and very, he was a good host when people would come over, and a good entertainer, making sure everybody was taken care of. Our relationship was always pleasant and friendly.
Emmett graduated from Utah University with a science degree and also attended Ricks College, where he played football.
The relationship seemed absolutely rock solid. They had the same goals, same ideology, and everything was good.
He was an only child, and his parents divorced when he was really young, so he would just go back and forth. His mom really made him her whole world. They were just kind of the two amigos, and him and his mom were just best friends.
Emmett really was on the rise. He pursued his doctorate at Gonzaga University, and by the time they had their fourth child, he had graduated law school, and that was in 2009. So he quickly received a job offer at a bankruptcy firm in Boise. This caused them to have to relocate because he was ready to take his bar exam.
A year to a year and a half, things seemed to be different.
It's around that time that Ashley, newly pregnant with her fifth child, had noticed her husband was becoming more and more distant.
Ashley, believing that the problems in their marriage were her fault, sought the counsel of a therapist. And at one point, the therapist asked if Emmett could come to a session. And even though he was aware of the time and the place, he never showed up. And Ashley really began to think that this was something that she was doing, that it was her fault for the problems in their marriage.
I kind of talked Emmett into going to a marriage counselor, and our first appointment, he didn't end up showing up. He ended up going out of town with his stepbrother and met him at a bodybuilding competition. So it was just me and the marriage counselor. And I kind of explained some of my insecurities and struggles. My parents had been divorced, and basically begged this counselor to fix me so I could figure out what was going on with my marriage. And by the end, the counselor was like, sometimes those feelings deep down, there's something really wrong. And I just kind of dismissed him, like, no, nothing's wrong. Just fix me and help me be a better wife, and whatever I need to do, I will do it.
On March 11th, Ashley actually tried very hard to reclaim the romance that she and Emmett had. And she cooked an elaborate meal and was looking forward to just spending some nice, quiet, romantic time with him, and he didn't show up. When he did come home, he said he wasn't hungry and went into another room and said he had to work. That really depressed her.
That morning I woke up and I was thinking, I'm going to make everything great today. I'm gonna send him pictures of the kids. I'm gonna get the kids all dolled up. We're gonna have all of his favorite foods when he gets home. And he came home late. He acted very distant. I tried to kiss him and he kind of brushed me away. And he never ate one bite of the food. It was just kind of a failed attempt to show him everything that he had and everything that I wanted him to fight for. We had a friend who was a marriage counselor, and I'd reached out to a few people saying, something's not right with Emmett. I need help. I don't know what to do. And at one point in the night, he gets on the phone and I could tell that it was this person. And he went into our room where the baby monitor was on, and I could kind of hear him talking, and I knew. I was like, okay, maybe this guy will get through to him. As the conversation gets going and I just hear little brief things over the baby monitor, I start going, like, everything he's saying isn't true. He was talking about things that I'm doing, and like, Ashley's never home, and gaslighting, basically making me the bad guy. And I got to the point where I just turned the baby monitor off and felt even more lost and small. And he came out at one point and mentioned that he had talked to this person, and I said, well, maybe I should talk to him too. He's a counselor, maybe he could help us. And so I went in the back room and unplugged the baby monitor and got on the phone, and this guy basically believed everything that he said and just started going off on me, like, what are you doing? You're gonna ruin your family. And in the middle of the conversation, I'm just kind of on the rocking chair, and Emmett walks in and he looks at me, and it was almost like this desperate face that I probably made at him. And he was like, I'm gonna run to Walgreens. I got this little cough, I'm gonna go run to Walgreens. And that same just feeling inside of me that something wasn't right, I felt it. And I held the phone away from my ear and I just said, please don't go. Me and you need to talk. We need to figure this out. We have this amazing family. And as I'm saying all this, he just dismisses me and said, I'm gonna go. Don't tell me what to do. And he walked out the garage door, slammed the door, which woke up the baby. But I knew something wasn't right. I felt it inside of me. And I bounced this baby for hours, waiting for him to come home, and he never came home.
In 2011, Meridian, Idaho, Emmett and Ashley Corrigan are having marital problems. During a confrontation, Emmett insists he needs to leave to go to the local Walgreens, the popular US pharmacy chain offering medications, health products, and everyday essentials. What he doesn't tell his wife is that he's going there to meet his colleague, named Candy Hall.
It wasn't long into his tenure at the new firm that Candy was hired, and they quickly became friends, and that friendship turned into something much more intimate. There were many texts, and suddenly, even though Ashley was pregnant with her 5th child, Emmett wasn't coming home very much.
When we moved to Boise, the market was really low, so we were able to get an amazing house, and he started an amazing career, and I was pregnant with our 5th baby. Like, everything just felt like this was all worth it. Law school and all the sacrifices, here's the easy time.
The Corrigans were a picture of the squeaky clean, all-American family. With Emmett's career on the rise, the future looked bright.
Looking back, I should have been more stressed about pretty much raising the kids by myself during law school. But it was more of one of those things that, like, I love this man, I love these kids, and you just kind of put your head down and push through. And I never really looked at it as overwhelming. So after he passed the bar, he started working at Jake Peterson's office solely. And then a few months later, he met Candy, and that's when they decided to do the criminal law together.
Emmett had hired Candy Hall, and it wasn't long after Candy and Emmett struck up their torrid affair, exchanging racy emails, spicy text messages, and indulging in late-night rendezvous. They were having sex, apparently, sometimes in the office.
He went to lunch with his paralegal who introduced him to Candy. And Candy kind of laid out this plan for him that day, is what I'm told, that she was going to kind of just slip him clients under the table and help him build a criminal office. And then once she got her Christmas bonus, she was gonna just dip and come over and work just solely for Emmett.
Even though they tried to keep their blossoming relationship a secret at the office, it became an open secret.
Anybody who meets Emmett, you could just see that he was going to work hard and make it. He just had that drive. And it sounds like she was ready to leave her office anyway, and I think she just really wanted to set herself up to success.
Candy Hall was actually 10 years older than Emmett. She had lost her job at another law firm and had gotten a new job at the law firm that Emmett was at. She had 2 children at home and appeared to be smitten with Emmett once she met him.
When I first met Candy, it was more like I walked in to awkwardness. I was outside the door and someone in the office was like, just go walk in. And I pushed open the door and I see this woman she had really tall boots on and a mini skirt. And I couldn't even put it all together at first. I thought maybe it was a client. And then I was introduced to her as our new paralegal. And it was one of those, like, this part of your brain's going, no, you're good. And the other side is like, something is not right. And of course, now looking back, I know everything that wasn't right, but at the time, you just kind of feel crazy. I mean, any insecure, big pregnant woman who walks into her husband's office and sees that has a moment of like, whoa, I'm not comfortable with this.
A week before, Ashley had told me that they were having trouble. She suspected some things going on between his paralegal, Candy, and him.
Unlike Emmett and Ashley's superficial relationship, Candy was experiencing a lot of turmoil in her marriage to Robert Hall. He was abusive, he was having an affair, and that's why she sought the comfort of someone else and started to stay at the office well past the end of working hours.
From what they said in court, their affair started in May, right after they met, and he didn't die till the next March. Around Christmas time, we were supposed to go to Emmett's family's house, and he called and told them we were sick, so we ended up staying home for the holiday. And that's when I started going, something is not right. Even Thanksgiving, I remember looking out, we were at my aunt's house, and he was just on his phone and not engaging with the kids. Just weird stuff at first. It wasn't anything big, but it was just like these little red flags kept going off. But by January, when my baby was born, I knew something was wrong.
I went to see Emmett at his new office. And I walked in the front. Candy's office was over to the right, and Emmett's was straight ahead. And there just seemed like there was a little bit too much when I saw her. Like, she looked like she was dressed for an evening at the bar, not legal bar, the downtown bar, and it just seemed a little off. And that was my only encounter with her. And the next thing I heard was the week before Emmett was murdered that Emmett was having an affair with her. You know how you kind of get feelings about things?
We hadn't really spent any time together as a family. Like all through law school, it was like, once this happens, then we're gonna have our family back. So it was more just, I was kind of grieving this family that I thought we were gonna have.
It was always in the future, we're going to have time together. And then when, according to Ashley, when they were having this affair, it was, I gotta go to Walgreens. I gotta do this, and then he's gone for hours. You know, just knowing that she has 4 kids at that time, and then a 5th, and then he's gone a lot, so she had the burden of taking care of him.
March the 11th, 2011, tensions are running high in the Corrigan home. Emmett tells Ashley he needs to make a trip to Walgreens. What he doesn't tell her is that he is meeting Candy there.
Little did Ashley know that at the same time, Candy was telling her husband Robert the same exact thing.
He left my house, went to Walgreens, picked Candy up, and they drove in his truck. And then she said that they went down and had sex in a neighborhood and down in Eagle.
At virtually the same time as Candy and Emmett were canoodling in the subdivision, her teenage daughter passed by the Walgreens and observed her mom's car in the parking lot. She thought that was strange, so she called her dad and said, "What is Mom doing at Walgreens?" Of course, he had no idea that she was there.
I went and got gas at Fred Meyer with Emmett, and then we were driving back. My daughter called, and she said, "Mom, where are you?" And I told her I was with Michelle, and that is my best friend Michelle, because I didn't want to tell her who I was with.
In response to his daughter's question, Rob called Candy's phone. It was actually Emmett that answered, saying, "What's up, Chief?" in a really threatening or condescending way. This could be what we consider the provoking incident. It might even be called passion provocation.
But no one could have predicted how far the violence would escalate. Meridian, Idaho, 2011. Emmett Corrigan is cheating on his wife Ashley with a work colleague named Candy Hall. When Candy's husband Rob catches her with Emmett, he erupts in a fit of anger and jealousy.
Rob called, and he calls me, and I pick up, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I am out." He said, "Are you out with Emmett?" And I said, "I am." And he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "We're just talking." And then Emmett goes, "Let me talk to him." And then Emmett got really upset with Rob on the phone and said something like, I'll break your head."
I had heard Rob Hall's name one time. Right after Titus was born, we were heading to a movie, and Emmett had something weird on his Facebook. He was talking about Californians can talk the talk, but can they walk the walk? And I asked him about it. And he said, yeah, Candy's husband's really abusive and I keep having to protect her from him and we're trying to get restraining orders and all this stuff. So he had mentioned his name, but that's all I ever heard of him.
Unbeknownst to either Candy or Emmett, when Rob exited his vehicle, he had a gun out and at his side. This is outside the view of any of the cameras that captured what happened.
From what I learned in court, Rob Hall drove first to his parents' house to get a gun that Candy had given him for Christmas. And apparently it was his only gun that had a laser. So he picked up that gun and then went to Walgreens.
Rob heads to the Walgreens, hell-bent on finding his wife.
Rob Hall, all the while, is at Walgreens with his hands in his hoodie pocket. There's a video of him walking around. He walks around Walgreens a few times. You can tell on his face he's not happy.
He roams the aisle searching for Candy, never realizing that Candy and her lover Emmett were in Emmett's truck. Rob leaves the store and checks Candy's parked BMW. Then he gets back into his own pickup, pulls out, and then parks again on the other side of Candy's car.
He sits in his car for 7 minutes, and apparently that's when he makes the phone call that he talks to Emmett. And then you see him back out his car, and the camera's facing this way, and his car moves out of the view of the camera.
17 minutes later, Candy and Emmett pull up to see Rob. What they don't know is that he has a gun in his pocket and is in a jealous rage.
For a while, you see people moving, and then there's like a quiet moment, and no cars are in the parking lot. Nobody else is around, and that's when people heard the gunshots and the 911 call.
Rob provoked Emmett, saying, "Why don't you go home to your wife? You have 5 kids at home." And that set Emmett off. He pushed off his truck and he came at Rob, and Candy says she turned around to leave and never saw what happened.
What do you need, police, fire, or paramedic?
There was gunshots. The Walgreens, when I drove by, there were 2 people down.
All units 10-3. It now appears as though shots are being fired. All officers use caution.
Candy heard 3 shots ring out. She saw both Emmett and Rob fall to the ground. She ran to Emmett first and realized that he had been shot in his chest and head. She then turned to Rob and saw that he had a graze wound on his head. Realizing that Emmett was more mortally wounded, she ran to Emmett and rendered aid.
Emmett got out of the truck, and I got out, and I stood there, and Rob came up, and Emmett's a very aggressive man. He's body built, so he's really pumped up all the time. And he got like this close up to Rob's face. And I remember, and I go, "Hey, knock it off. This is ridiculous." And I hear pop, pop, and then pop. And that's all I heard. And I turned around, and both of them are laying on the ground.
Out of the corner of her eye, she sees Rob reach for the gun and start to pick it up. She turns, grabs the gun out of his hand, and basically throws it across the parking lot as if it were a bowling ball. So the gun is now displaced and removed from that area where the crime took place.
Rob shot Emmett twice before turning the gun onto himself.
He was shot once in the head and once in the heart. Because Rob had weapons training. He worked for the sheriff's department. It was the IT department, but you still have to go through all the training.
And then I ran over, and I was pretty stunned at that point. I'm like, what in the world? Because I didn't even know what the pop pop was. It almost sounded like balloons popping. And it was kind of like on his, like this. And I didn't know what was going on. And I just see all this blood and gushes down his rough face. So I went over and I covered. He had this wound on his top of his head, not covered, and I'm calling 911. He was walking forward, and I see him going down, and I'm like, because I didn't know what he was grabbing for, because I didn't even see it, because it's little. So I grabbed it, and I was holding on to his shirt because it looked like he was going to fall. And I grabbed the gun. I go, no. And I'm like, no, you need to sit down. No. And I took it and I threw it in the street.
Candy frantically calls 911. Police arrive on the scene to find a hysterical woman and 2 men shot.
Emmett succumbs to his injuries and dies at the scene. Rob's self-inflicted wound is superficial, and police quickly apprehend him.
Police swarm the Walgreens and arrest Rob Hall on the spot.
Of course, because this was a homicide, Rob was arrested and charged with murder and ended up posting $1 million bail. One of the terms of that bail was that he'd not have any contact with Candy.
When Rob was bailed out, they spent a week together. And from the time he got out of jail to the time that we were in court, her testimony had totally changed.
She called me and she said, he posted bail and he's out. I couldn't believe it either. But I think his parents got a mortgage on their house. Something like that. I'm not exactly sure. But that was really strange that they would allow that.
It was at the scene that the police questioned both Candy and Rob and asked them why they were at the Walgreens, and Rob freely admitted that he had gone to the Walgreens after his daughter had not been able to reach his wife and saw her vehicle at the parking lot in Walgreens. And when he arrived there, he confronted Emmett. Candy told police that when she arrived home from work that evening, she had found Rob packing boxes, and then he said to her, "The marriage is over." And that's why she left and went to Walgreens to seek support and comfort from Emmett. Candy also admitted to police that she and Emmett had talked about their failing marriages, had gone to the gas station, and then went to the place where they parked and had sex.
Fueled by jealousy, Candy's husband Rob chose to take Emmett's life, leaving his wife Ashley widowed and alone to take care of their 5 young children.
The night he died, I finally got the courage to say something like, "You haven't slept in our bed for a few weeks now. And when you don't want to be intimate with me, it makes me think either I don't do it for you anymore or someone else is." And he literally went quiet, which for me, it was like, well, maybe he has nothing to say. But now looking back, I'm like, he was just hiding all of the things that he should have told me right then. The detectives tell me I text and called him at about 10:15. That's when the panic really hit. I was having a panic attack and I just kept trying to get a hold of him with no answer. And about midnight, I guess, the baby fell asleep after screaming. He had never cried so hard. He felt it too. We both just kind of cried and bounced for hours, but he fell asleep. And then I finally was like, all right, I guess I'm going to sleep. I don't know what else to do. He won't answer my phone calls. So I laid down and all I remember is a pound at my door, just hard pounding on my door. And I woke up almost excited, like maybe he got in a wreck. He's at the hospital. He needs us. He's going to see us. We're going to walk in. He's going to have one of those Beauty and the Beast rooftop moments where he sees his family and all that he has, and he's going to appreciate it. And instead, it was these 3 people just dressed in street clothes and, asking to come in and talk to me. And eventually, they talked me into allowing them to come in, and we sat on my black couch, and the man that turned out to be the detective on the case just said it all at once. "Do you know a Candy Hall? Do you know her husband, Rob? Do you know that they were at Walgreens tonight? And by the way, your husband was shot once in the forehead and once in the heart, and he died in Candy's arms." Just all at once. I honestly, it's still just kind of broken pieces of words, but that feeling of insignificance that I already felt, not knowing what was wrong, only grew stronger as I found out the facts of everything he was doing and everything that was done to him that night.
Carla is my wife. I turned my phone off at night. My daughters were trying to call me, couldn't get through, so they called her, woke her up. She drove over to my house. And then we went over to Ashley's house. And, you know, it's the middle of the night, the kids are still asleep. And now it's time for the kids to get up. I think that's probably one of the most difficult things I've ever done, is to tell the twins, Boston and Bailey, that their daddy died that night. And I'll never forget, I forget which one of them said it. We told them that their daddy died, and she just, the little girl, my daddy died? It's like, that'll get you. We didn't go to bed that night. We were up all night, and then the rest of the day was kind of a blur. We were gone, and then we were back together, and it's just more of trying to process something like that. And it certainly didn't happen that morning. The rest of the day was kind of a blur. We were gone, and then we were back together, and it's just more. We didn't know about really what had happened at the funeral, I can tell you that. We didn't know really what happened. And I felt so sorry for his dad. His dad was there, and, you know, he wants to think the best of his son. And I don't blame him. And he was talking, and I think he just had hope, you know, that Emmett was talking to her. He was just meeting with her because she was going through a divorce and trying to help her. And then it came out that it was actually a lot worse than that. You know, a man gets betrayed by his wife. I mean, I could see why he'd be angry. I called into the morning talk show here in town the day after, and the guy on the DJ actually asked me about that. And I said, it's one thing to be angry, leave the gun home.
I mean, the hate that you feel when you find out someone was sleeping with your spouse is real. I believe his motive was to just end the affair so he didn't have to feel that pain anymore. And I know one of the last things he said to Emmett was like, think about your wife and your kids back at home. And I always have felt a little confused when he was asking Emmett to think of us, but he himself didn't. Like, there's so many other options besides a gun, besides taking a life.
You know, I don't know Rob. I know that they were having trouble, and it came out in the news that he was having an affair. And so, one big happy family.
Some who knew Emmett wondered if his sudden bursts of anger could be linked to roid rage.
Our relationship was always pleasant and friendly, but over the last, I would say, year to a year and a half, things seemed to be different with Emmett. A little bit aggressive, kind of a hard edge on him. And, you know what? I know why, because of the drugs, the steroids, and, you know, people tend to get a little, you know, pumped up, shall we say, when they do that. But his responses with the kids and a response with me one time just seemed off. From what I heard from his half-brother was steroids and pseudoamphetamines. So he was getting up really early in the morning and going to the gym and working out a lot. So he was getting really pumped up, built, you know, muscles were getting bigger and bigger. And that had to have had an effect on him. Maybe skewed his judgment. I mean, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. I don't know for sure. I always liked him. He was great in the family, and pretty shocking.
As the court case approaches, both families prepare for their private lives to come under public scrutiny. In Meridian, Idaho in 2011, after a tense confrontation with his wife Ashley, Emmett Corrigan goes to Walgreens to meet his colleague Candy Hall, with whom he is having an affair. Candy's husband Rob manages to track them down, and after the intense confrontation, Rob shoots Emmett dead in a jealous rage. Now it is time for him to stand trial.
For 4 weeks, there was a lot of media attention around this case.
After a murder, you're just thrown in the legal process instantly. They're sitting on your couch telling you everything, and the next day they're there picking up computers and phones, and I wanted them to know everything. Like, I didn't want him to miss anything, so I literally turned over everything he had at work and spent a year and a half in the legal system trying to help them find the truth. The process of turning over everything was more like a hope that they would find evidence of all sorts of things. I wanted evidence that he still loved me. I wanted evidence of, I don't even know. It was just, you're constantly hoping they find something that makes you feel better or heals something inside of all the broken pieces. But being in court, I found it to be very stifling and borderline abusive. Like, you literally sit there and they talk about a human life that was taken as if he was nothing. Everyone who commits a crime is protected in the court system because they're not allowed to use past discretions against you. So it's basically evidence of that night and that is it. However, the victim, they can use all sorts of past anything for him. Rob's testimony was a lot about he didn't remember what happened, but his defense also brought a lot of he was defending himself, which for me, defending yourself can't happen if you don't remember what happened. So he never did testify, but the story for me didn't add up, because if you can't remember something, you can't remember what you were defending.
There was a trial date, and then we got pretty close to it, and then they did a continuance. And so Ashley was just, she wanted to have a little closure from that. So that was really tough when that was going on for her. It just like strung it out for a long time. And then when it finally did come, I think she had some hope of some kind of, I'm gonna feel better or something, but I really don't think she did. He was convicted, but it doesn't bring Emmett back.
On the last day of the trial, this brand new cafe opened up. So everybody was down there eating lunch, and as I went to fill up my drink, Rob's sister was right there, and I just got this, I don't know, it was more like, let her know that you are sorry she's going through this. And we just had one of those kind of conversations, and it was really a cool moment, actually. And the jury was out, and they kind of had stuffed me in this back room to wait. And I was told a little late. So by the time I got to the back of the courtroom, the judge was already standing and announcing the verdict. And for the first time, I had a different view. I was in the back of the courtroom instead of on the victim's side. And it was the weirdest, like, slow motion. The judge is standing, he's announcing the verdict, and I thought it was gonna be this pinnacle of my healing, and this guy's gonna go to jail and everything's gonna be better. And instead, for the first time, I saw in the courtroom these two families, this mom over here and this mom over here, who I hadn't talked to Emmett's mom much since he died. And I just felt this overwhelming, like, everybody's hurting. No matter what happens, no matter what the judge says, everybody lost. And it was almost more than I could take.
Rob was found guilty and sentenced to 30 years for second-degree murder and is eligible for parole in 2030.
Rob Hall filed an appeal with the Idaho Court of Appeals, arguing that the judge erred in failing to properly instruct the jury of his justifiable homicide defense by admitting testimony about Rob's gun being out of the holster at the time of the shooting. This shows intent because the holster was still in Rob's truck when he fired the 2 shots into Emmett. The appeals court did not find error in those actions and unanimously upheld Hall's conviction on the 21st of October, 2015. The mood in the courtroom was very emotional. Rob's demeanor throughout the trial was that he was sorry and remorseful.
Candy was deemed to be an incredible witness because she kept changing her story. And the judge really didn't take well to that. So she really did not consider Candy to be a credible and trustworthy witness.
Are you and Emmett involved in a romantic relationship?
No.
Have you ever been romantic, Emmett?
No.
Okay, now let's say sexual. Have you been sexual with Emmett?
No.
Candy also spent time in jail after that. She apparently was embezzling money from her former employer. She had a PayPal account that was almost identical to her boss's. She would take the retainer fee and put $10,000, $5,000 of it in her account and $5,000 in her boss's account. Here they are, both parents were in jail. Their children went to the same high school that my children went to.
You know, I've thought for all these years, trying to make sense of why he chose her, why he was fighting for her when he died. Instead of staying home and fighting for me and for his amazing children. And I think it's that same feeling, like we all get those feelings of insignificance. And I don't know what caused his, maybe it was something in his childhood or some belief that he had, but he let that feeling grow and tried to fill a void with what I would say is a lesser value than what he already had. But when you feel insignificant, sometimes you really can't see that that's what you're doing.
These cases in which you have a three-way relationship, this relationship or sexual triangle, are very difficult, and they're not uncommon because you have competing forces. So I find it kind of ironic that Rob, who was cheating on Candy, would actually become so enraged that he would take someone's life because she was cheating on him. It's almost like a double standard.
Emmett's murder, fueled by betrayal, jealousy, and rage, leaves both families permanently affected.
I went through waves of feeling sorry for Rob in a way, like knowing the feelings that he was going through and the hurt that you feel with affairs. And then I went through waves of just hating him for not thinking of my kids and putting my family through this hell.
It's not uncommon in cases such as this. You know, in his mind, it was okay for him to stray from their marriage, but not for her. And he allowed his emotions to overcome him to the point where he killed and was convicted of that.
My kids grew up when that gun went off, but they have a compassion for people that I know they wouldn't have without this story. They are so caring and loving that they are my greatest examples. This story didn't break them, and that's what I'm so proud of. This story gave them a life of really thinking about other people and what other people go through.